Okay, good morning, everyone. For those of you who I don't know, let me introduce myself to you. My name is Terry Bordell. I'm the Chief School Improvement Officer here at Questar III BOCES. And welcome to all of you to the gaming industry in the Capital Region. Over the past year, we have offered multiple events that focus on industries here in the Capital Region. We focused on manufacturing, we have focused on healthcare and others, and we look forward to offering more in the near future. But today, we're very excited to be focusing on the gaming industry here in the Capital Region. My partner in these endeavors is Jim Church, Questar III BOCES Director of Strategic Initiatives. I'm going to turn things over to Jim momentarily, but first I would like to quickly introduce to all of you Jody Sullivan. She's our Professional Development Program Specialist, and she just wants to share an announcement quickly, kind of Zoom housekeeping. So Jody.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet many of you. Nice to see some of you in a new role. Just to help with attendance purposes, especially if your name on your screen is not showing up anything close to your name that you used to register with on Frontline, if you could please hover over the top right-hand box of your screen, right where your face is, and change your name, or over all the way to the right where it says participants, you can click and update your name for me. That would be really helpful. So hi, welcome, and enjoy.
Great. Thank you, Jody. And now, and once again, let me introduce Jim Church, our Director of Strategic Initiatives here at Questar III BOCES, and looking forward to a great event today. Jim, to you.
Thank you, Terry. Good morning, everyone. We are glad that you're able to join us this morning to hear from some of the region's leaders from the video game industry. Today's event offers a platform for our guests to share their insights and information about the digital gaming industry, some from a business perspective and others who provide training or education programs that will support the continued growth that the region has enjoyed over the past 10 to 15 years. Before introducing our first guest, I wanted to briefly share some anecdotal information that I'm sure some of our speakers will touch on regarding what the Capital Region's gaming ecosystem looks like today. So I figured I'd start by looking at these well-known games and pose the question, what do each of these have in common? If your answer was that they all have a connection to our region, you'd be correct. Each of these games were fully developed by or received engineering online network support by companies located here in the region, which is pretty impressive when you think about how popular and well-known some of these game titles are. Did you know that we are home to 24 studios throughout the region, with clusters of both large and small studios located in Rensselaer, Schenectady, and Saratoga counties? 24 studios located both big and small all around the region. Altogether, the industry has over 500 employees working here, and with the pandemic making remote working more common, that number is likely to rise. In fact, according to a survey conducted earlier this year by the Center for Economic Growth, many of the local businesses are projecting to grow their workforce in the coming year. And when you think of video game applications, just don't think of it as entertainment, as applications are going beyond that to fields of healthcare, simulated training in the trades, and education, as well as learning more about that we'll learn more about in today's program.
Jim, can I interrupt just for 1 second?
Sure.
We're having problems seeing your screen, the slides.
Oh, let me do this. How about that?
You're up now, yes.
Boy, that's usually helpful. You can tell I'm so tech savvy. I'm the perfect person to be moderating this today, so my apologies, guys. Let me just quickly show the slides I was trying to show you. So here are some of the titles I had mentioned before. Pretty recognizable titles for anybody who has any knowledge of the video game industry, so to speak. And here are some of the companies in the region that I wanted to highlight in particular, of the 24 that are located in the capital region. So in addition to those companies that are located here, we have workforce needs. And to meet those workforce needs, both in the short and long term, there are a variety of programs offered by both higher education, as well as organizations in the community that are educating and fostering these workforce needs. They include RPI's Games and Simulation Arts and Sciences program, which has been recognized by the Animation Career Review as one of the top 20 game design schools in 2021. SUNY Schenectady's Associate Degree Program, which offers a programming in game design, as well as UAlbany's Game Design and Development Program that we'll be learning a little bit more about today, as well as organizations in the community such as Albany Can Code and the Tech Valley gaming space, which provide training and or nurture the interests and skills of both adults and students with programs they offer, which we'll learn a little bit more about today as well. So Questar has been actively involved with regards to working with the industry to create unique learning opportunities. And some of those include facilitating a unique partnership that the Questar III STEM Research Institute developed between Vicarious Visions and 3 of our component school districts to develop an introduction to video game design course that was supported by the Rensselaer County IDA, New York State Empire State Development's Gaming Hub, along with RPI. That led to a second course being developed this summer in partnership with the Tech Valley Game Space, between Tech Valley Game Space and Averill Park, in which a second course was developed. So now Averill Park has 2 courses in video game design that they are offering. And this was these efforts were recognized by the New York State School Boards Association in their Champions of Change for Kids program for introducing innovative learning opportunities. We also have been involved in scheduling student tours such as those that we did for, as example, the Greenfield School District when they visited WB Games of New York to visit their studio and learn about their programs. And we've also done so through unique platforms like the 2019 Steaming Towards Success conference that highlighted lesson plans relative to game design. So there are a lot of exciting things that are happening in the region, and we're lucky to have these individuals join us today to help us better understand the industry and the future opportunities that await our students. Today's format will be in 15-minute segments offering presentations and insights, and the chance for a few questions at the end of each talk. So as we're here to learn more about hear from the experts, so to speak, and learn about the industry as opposed to me, I'm pleased to introduce our first guest, who is Karthik Bala, the CEO of Velan Studios. Karthik and his brother Guha are a couple of the pioneers in the region's gaming industry. They actually began their first company when they were in high school still, and we are thrilled to have Karthik join us today. So Karthik, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. This is going to be fun. So let me see if I can screen share. And Jim, I appreciate you going through the overview of the region. It's a lot of exciting stuff happening in the region for video games. I hope everybody can see my screen. Are we good? Okay, so actually, you know what? I may have some video. I'm going to try this again and make sure I'm streaming this. All right, here we go. This will be better. Okay. All right. So I will talk a little bit about Velan Studios. You know, our mission is to create breakthrough games that are magic, and I'll talk about what that means a little bit later on. But before I get into that, I just want to talk about the industry, you know, overall. Surprising fact is that there's 2.7 billion gamers in the world. If you kind of do the math, that's like 1 in 3 people on the planet play video games. That number was even surprising to me, you know, in terms of how much growth has happened in the industry over the last, you know, even the last 10, 15 years, because the reality is everybody plays video games, and it's very cross-generational in nature. It's not just about kids playing games. Those of us who started out on Atari and back in the 70s, 80s, and beyond, players stuck with gaming from their childhood to being adults. And you've got parents playing with their kids. You've got grandparents involved. The kind of content that's available is so wide-reaching now. It's so diverse. There's literally something for everybody, and it just crosses cultural boundaries. This growth has been driven by a number of factors, including just going from traditional video game consoles and PCs to smart devices and mobile, especially in the last 10 years. And in a lot of countries, the mobile phone is actually the most powerful computing device in the home. And yes, people are gaming with those. And with that population growth of gamers is also the revenue. The projection for this year is $160 billion globally in revenue for the video game industry. That's massive. Just to kind of size that up, the box office globally for movies is $42 billion, and the music industry is $20 billion. Video games dwarf those industries. The only industry that's actually bigger is television, global television, with all of the advertising, revenue, and that is shrinking in significant ways. And actually, advertising and sponsors are actually moving into gaming. So you're seeing this continued growth of gaming and contraction in other entertainment industries. And so the impact on arts and culture around the world can't be understated, in terms of what video games do and offer. But it's actually more than just entertainment. Jim touched on this. It's broader than just entertainment, for video games. It's impacting all these different industries, from various different tech sectors. Some of you may be aware of self-driving car technology. Those self-driving cars are trained inside video games because it's safer to make mistakes, in those simulations for artificial intelligence than in real life. And then they get trained in real life. It obviously has huge impacts in chip manufacturing and consumer electronics, as it's really driving the performance and capabilities of these systems. We'll touch on augmented reality. This is a sea change that's happening, starting to happen now. But much like we can't imagine a world without mobile phones, I believe, are going to be a thing of the past in 10 years. 10 years time, it's going to get replaced. And augmented reality and mixed reality, where digital information coexists with us humans in the real world, is going to massively change how we interact with digital information, and content. It's also affecting healthcare, training and military defense, social media. Some of these games are becoming platforms, and obviously there's a big impact in education. And interestingly, huge amounts of investments coming into video games from fintech and finance industries in some unusual ways. As I touched on, games are becoming platforms in and of themselves. When the CEO of Netflix was asked in an investor briefing if they felt that Disney, with their Disney Plus subscription, where it was going to be a competitor, who their competitors are, Netflix's response was Fortnite is the competitor to Netflix. It's like the share of time that's being spent. And these video games not just compete with linear media, but they're actually social platforms in and of themselves. And it's where kids and adults are chatting, spending time together, especially during COVID. You saw even a significant increase of this, because this is how we got to be social and interact with one another. So I'll talk a little bit about Velan Studios. We're in downtown Troy, and my brother and I started the studio in 2016, and we were previously the founders of Vicarious Visions. And Vicarious Visions, we started when we were in high school. I was 15 years old. My brother was 14. We were going to high school in Rochester, New York, and we started in our parents' basement. And the studio grew from there. We ran the studio for 25 years, and we left in 2016 to to build a new independent studio, Velan Studios, with this mission of creating breakthrough new kinds of experiences and that are magic. And what that sort of breaks down into is, can we create experiences, play patterns, technologies that people have not ever experienced before? So it wasn't enough for us to just make the next video game. It was, can we bring something really new? And so that's actually our only rule in the studio: create something new. And we have about 100 employees. A lot of that growth has actually happened in the last year and a half. And we have like 30 some odd positions open, right now. So there's a lot happening. And many of us have been in the industry for a very long time. Some of us have worked together for 25 years. And but we also have a mix of talent of new folks who've come right out of school. Some of the regional gaming programs, as an example. I'll talk a little bit about a couple of the games that we've made. So we launched our first title last year, Mario Kart Live Home Circuit. It was in collaboration with Nintendo. It's a really unique, kind of game experience. It's both a toy, and a video game. And this video, and I'm going to put some links in the chat in a little bit. You can check out at your leisure. But what we developed here was an RC car that's also a video game. It's actually a computer on wheels that we designed at Velan Studios in Troy, and it brings the digital world into the real world. So players can create their own courses at home. What you're seeing are some really elaborate creations, by our community of players, and they create their own race course in their home with whatever parts, and be as creative as you want. And the car recognizes that. And you can race against computer opponents or race with other real players. And it's actually bringing the digital gameplay into the physical world. And we think that this is an opportunity for some serious breakthrough, where it's the future of physical and digital play combined. When physical objects become aware of digital objects and they can interact with one another, it's very powerful. And we're just scratching the surface with what we launched last year. And we actually developed the hardware, reference prototype, the software, the computer vision, and all the low-level technology, even the game engine, we had to build from scratch. And so there was a lot of breakthroughs in both technology and game design to be able to pull this off. And we actually took that prototype to Japan, and the folks at Nintendo loved it, and then we built a partnership to be able to bring Mario to life in the real world, which was fantastic. We also launched our second product, Knockout City. Oh, before I get to Knockout City, real quick, Mario Kart Live, really was a breakthrough in a lot of ways, and we got a lot of recognition as well. This year, we won at the DICE Awards, which is our academy for Racing Game of the Year. And most recently, this one was on my bucket list, but we won at the Japan Game Awards for the Game Designers Prize, which is a huge honor, because some of the best game designers in the world are based in Japan, and they voted our game as breakthrough in game design, and that was a big deal for us. We also got recognized as a company. We got recognized by Fast Company this year as one of the top 10 design companies, and this is actually across all industries. So in that top 10 was Google, Adidas, and other really big name brands, and Velan Studios for reimagining play. So that was pretty rad. We launched our second product not 6 months later. Now, both of these games were in development for a long time. Very different. A game called Knockout City. It's a online multiplayer dodgeball game. We envisioned a competitive, online game that is a shooter, but it's not a shooter. There's no guns in this world, and you throw balls at one another, trying to knock out opponents. Sounds simple, right? The idea of throwing and catching a ball. Turns out that throwing and catching a ball over the internet is a really, really hard problem that hadn't been solved before. And it required us to just rethink how we do things. We actually had to invent a new programming language to make this game. And it requires some fundamental breakthroughs in tech to be able to bring this game to life. It's gotten a lot of really great reviews. We have millions of players in our player community around the world, and it's also a game that's been adopted by the ECAC as part of their eSports program, for this new school year, and it's a game that exists on all the game platforms, and players can play together. So whether you're on PC or PlayStation or Xbox or Nintendo Switch, you can all play together in a seamless way, and it's in and of itself has its own sort of social community where players are playing every day, in this competitive, colorful world. I'll put some links for some videos. But we invented this world. It runs online with servers that we run around the world. There's a real mix of talent at the studio, and this is common, with pretty much all game companies. But we have positions open in practically every discipline. It's a very multidisciplinary team sport, making video games. We have programmers who specialize in different areas within engineering, artists in 3D and 2D and animation. We have game designers and writers, producers and managers, musicians and audio talent. Great way to get in the door is through QA and almost in an apprenticeship sort of way, learn the ropes in other disciplines. But we also are growing our brand managers and marketing team, and we do all of the community management and the core marketing from within the studio. And so that marketing talent as well is an area that we're growing. And of course, we have an internship program that we also actively run with the regional colleges. So it's very multidisciplinary in terms of the approach to kind of create video games, and not just create them and release them, but an ongoing relationship with our players, because a lot of these games are live experiences that continue to evolve over time. It's an ongoing dialogue, with the player community, and that's really exciting, as its own set of social platforms that we manage. Anyway, that's it from me. I'll take some questions for a few minutes before handing it off to Steve Derrick.
Karthik, thank you. And I'm sorry, I should have said this before, but if anybody has any questions as we go along for any of our speakers, please in the chat, if you could submit them. We probably won't be able to get to all of them, but at least try to get to some of them. Karthik, could you just share just briefly? So we're going to provide the recording of this, not only to our 22 school districts, but also to the parents in the school districts as well. Can you, from your perspective, share with the parents a little bit about the opportunities and how parents should maybe look at the video game industry, a little bit differently than maybe what their perspective is as, seeing their kids just sitting there playing on their phones or in their basement or something like that?
Yeah, I think, at the heart of it, video games are extremely complex pieces of software, and they really do bring together the STEAM disciplines, right? It's technology, and it's technology, it's math, it's art. It's very multidisciplinary, and it's team-based projects, and it's extremely creative. When I think about when I think about the future, and I think about my own kids, and jobs of the future, there's a lot of categories of jobs that are going away, through AI and automation, and it's going to be this high intellectual capital jobs that are going to exist, and things that are inherently require that human factor to be the difference. And games really embody that. There's a lot of problem solving that goes into it, and even when you're playing video games, well-designed video games have a learning model in and of themselves. That's why they're fun. That's how you get better. It requires you to cooperate and work with other players when you're playing online. So there's a lot of positive aspects, to it. And speaking as a parent, I'm actually sort of very cognizant of a lot of these online social networks and what I let my kids do, and screen time and so on. So that doesn't go away. As a job as a parent, I manage that part too. But I really look at the positive aspects that it drives, the innate sense of curiosity, and fostering that. It's a very good thing.
So I just want to say thank you, because between yourself and the following speakers, everybody has a busy schedule. But as somebody who, as I mentioned before, you're a pioneer in the region with regards to starting a company, selling the company, and then starting another one, and doing so at such a young age. You're on the ground floor of beginning the industry here in the region. So I just wanted to say thank you for joining us this morning and sharing some of your knowledge.
Oh, no, it's my absolute pleasure. I didn't really go much into the story, but when we started, I had a mentor in high school. I met him. He and his brother were doing a startup. They were in their late 20s, when they were doing this. And he said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to make video games." And I didn't know any programming. I didn't know the first thing about it. It just felt so out of reach. And this is like before the internet, so just the knowledge was really hard to come by. But he said, "Why don't you go do it?" I said, "I have no idea how to do it. I'm just a kid." And he's like, "That's not an excuse." He pulled out a programming book from his shelf and a floppy disk, that had the compiler and software. He's like, "Go learn." And that's really what I needed. I needed that support and permission, almost permission to go do it. And it's not as inaccessible as you think. And what's amazing now is the community that we built here in the region and the success stories that are there, the talent that's there. It's very much within reach, and I'm constantly surprised by by what people are doing, and access to tools and technology is there now, and the new generation of talent are going to outclass us by a mile. So I'm just really excited about all of that, and I think that hopefully with the other speakers and the ongoing growth of this program, we can make students aware that it is possible, and it is within reach for them.
Well, your story certainly inspires people. So again, thank you. We appreciate your time this morning.
Sure thing.
So our next speaker is Steve Derrick. Steve is from Blizzard Entertainment, which used to be Vicarious Visions. Steve is the Director of Organizational Development. And quite honestly, he is the reason why we had that collaborative opportunity that I mentioned before with the STEM research program. We went to Steve early on, and not only was Steve interested in just helping educators get a better understanding about the industry, but was so open to collaboration ideas and going forward with it that he truly is the reason why we were able to create that opportunity. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Steve Derrick. Got you on mute, Steve.
There we go. Thank you, Jim. Yeah, I think one of the problems is following Karthik, because he's the pioneer and he's the reason we have a games industry in this area. It's everything kind of stemmed from that start at the RPI Tech Park that just expanded. Well, not even RPI Tech Park, from the Games Incubator Center and at RPI. But yeah, so big shout out to Karthik. Thanks for going over a lot of the stuff that is in the industry. Things that I was going to cover, but I think I'll cancel on or not talk about because we've already discussed them. But I think one of the things, I have a presentation I'll show in a little bit, but one of the things talking about this program that was at VV and with the externship teachers that came, before that started, we were talking with the superintendents, and one of the challenges, or that when talking to the superintendents, is that we're a cross-discipline, cross-functional team. It's not just an engineering team and an art team and a design team and whatever. We're all intermixed. We work together pretty closely. So creating a game design game development program at a school, one of the things that I talked to some superintendents about is that you can't just have one teacher that specializes in one thing, really being just the one teacher. And one of the challenges are that the art department at the schools doesn't necessarily talk to the physics department, which doesn't talk necessarily to the math department, which doesn't talk to the the tech teachers. So it was getting across these siloed organizations within the school districts to teach together. So an art teacher teaching with a physics teacher, or a math teacher, and a tech teacher teaching with a writing teacher. And how do you make these kind of cross-functional, cross-discipline things work together in creating a thing? It's the future. It's what is out there right now. So I think that was a lot of fun. You had 6 different teachers from different backgrounds, from different school districts, all coming up with this program that was in working game development. And we do guest teaching with them, with guest lectures. It's a lot of fun, but it's been a lot of fun seeing the progress in that program. And thanks, Jamey, for taking over and supporting last year, because COVID has been a kind of an interesting problem-solving challenge. Let me see if I can share my screen now and see if we can get this going here. Hang on a sec. All right, I think you can see my screen. Hopefully you'll be able to see the thing. So we're part of Activision Blizzard. Activision Blizzard is a large publisher. It's probably the largest publisher. Activision Blizzard has different parts within its organization. There's Activision Publishing, and Activision Publishing publishes games like Call of Duty, mostly Call of Duty now, because Call of Duty has just become huge within eSports and all the different ramifications of Call of Duty. But
Steve,
this is, yeah.
Can I stop you for a second? Are you sharing your screen?
I supposedly am. Oh, hold on.
There you
About
go.
now.
I'm speaking from experience
Yes.
about not doing it correct. So
I just didn't clear the button there, so I'll be back up. So Activision Blizzard is the larger parent corporation, is the publisher. But within Activision Blizzard, there's Activision, which does a lot of the Call of Duty and Crash Bandicoot and Skylanders and Tony Hawk and those things. That's where we were nested, as under Activision before. There's also Blizzard Entertainment. Blizzard Entertainment has like World of Warcraft, Diablo, Overwatch, and a lot of big titles that go with that. Hearthstone. It's another part of the publishing organization. And then there's King, and King is based in Sweden, but they're a large part of organization that does the games like Candy Crush and those kind of mobile games. And all 3 of these are the major portions, but within that, there's also nestled a bunch of other things like Major League Gaming and different things that go with the eSports portions. So like I said before, we were under the Activision banner with Vicarious Visions. This year we merged with Blizzard Entertainment. And Blizzard Entertainment is a huge organization. Their Irvine campus has like 3,000 people on it. There's different companies across the globe with part of our Activision in Korea and Austin, and now in Albany. So now we're Blizzard Entertainment, but we're based in Albany. So it's an Albany Blizzard Entertainment. And it's pretty exciting. The games we've made over the years there's just a lot of different things. We've worked from a lot of the handheld games early on to Crash Bandicoot to Guitar Hero, Swap Force, Skylanders. We worked with in partnership with Bungie for a while doing Destiny 2 and some expansions on that to last year. If I talk about last year, which is our recent past, it was Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2. And this was a remaster. I think we need to unstop. I'm going to show just a quick video. Sorry about this. Here we go. I'm not going to show very long things because these can be a little bit longer, but whoops.
We're going downtown, gonna beat up the ranks. You're to the drive, I'll bring the beer. It's a late, late shift, no one here. Ride, I'll ride.
So this is Tony Hawk. You can see Rensselaer Hydrant Company, which is kind of interesting in the warehouse district, warehouse version. This was a lot of fun. It was a remastering of a game that we'd been working on Tony Hawk 20 years ago, and it was kind of a fun blast to the past and coming back and bringing and remastering these games to be high fidelity 4K remasters of the same game that we played back in the day. And I think if we're looking at where we were then, that was what we did last year. We released that last year, and this year, this is what we released. This is as we merged with Blizzard, we've been part of their Diablo franchise, and this is Diablo 2 Resurrected. That was a game that was built 20 plus years ago as well in 2D pixels, and we remastered it into a 3D game that sat on top of the old game. So with a tab, hit the tab button, you could play the old game, and if you hit that tab again, it would pop in and you'd have the high-res 3D graphics on top of that. So it was a pretty interesting challenge to make it feel exactly like the old game. You could actually play the old game, but then pop in on top and be in a 3D environment.
How was it not yours, a wanderer? Now you know what I seek, Marius. Are these the demons from... Don't do it! It seems your turn. Fool! I'm not exempt. Look what they've done to me. Arise, Diablo, Lord of Terror. Though this be our darkest hour, it may yet be your greatest moment.
So get the kind of general gist where you've got the older game that you could see underneath, and you could hit the pause and it would pop in and you'd have a new 3D game. But very detailed, highly detailed stuff with Blizzard's Diablo 2 Resurrected. So that was then and now, and this is a game that's currently released, or not released, but in it's being announced, but we can talk about. This is one of our games we're currently working on, Diablo 2. This is where most of our team is, but some of them are working on Overwatch. This is Diablo 4. No children in the room, I hope. Very detailed cinematics. Just move ahead just a little bit so that we can see more of the gameplay. Well, we might not see the gameplay. It just popped off. I skipped the ad here. There we go. Again.
Blood. As Jamey didn't. It may be for knowledge.
Sorry, I think I picked the wrong video where this is mostly just the cinematics. I apologize, but very high res, very graphic, very detailed. Much different game than we're used to before working with Blizzard, but it's an interesting in transition working now with Blizzard here. You stop and then reshare.
Steve, while you're doing this, could you touch on a little bit as it relates to, so when we first started working with you, the thinking was that you have to have a student who is tech savvy, is in the coding and things of that nature. But what we had learned was, as it relates to the arts, whether it's art itself or writing, about how the industry really looks for talents like that as well. And because we have a lot of school counselors who are on this Zoom, could you share just some insights as it relates to those, how to go about encouraging those students who like to write or who have an artistic flair, so to speak? What would you share with students in front of you if they had those kind of interests and skills as it relates to this industry?
Well, I think an interesting thing is we have a team of over 200 that work for us here, and we're working now with Blizzard. We're part of a huge organization. So the games working on like Diablo 2 and Diablo 4, we're 200 of a team of maybe 500. So it's a lot of people working, and it takes more than just, Karthik went over, there's game design, there's engineering, there's production, there's QA, there's all these different parts within the organization. But when you get a larger team like this, you get even more specialized, and you have narrative designers and narrative writers, and within that you have people to work on in-game cutscenes or cinematics and writing the stories for different things. So there's a lot of writers. We have librarians that work for us in our as archivists. So there are all sorts of different non-traditional roles within game development. It's some of the new things, and working with like UAlbany is going to be talking later, but we have security engineering, and there's so many of these games that are online and working through, there's security engineers, there's like I said there's librarians, there's different kinds of artists that are not just your environment artist and your character artist, but now there's artists that work on developing everything from working in the stores to creating armor pieces, or it's not just what I'm trying to get at is there's a lot of different opportunities. So I think when you're talking about students that are just interested in playing games, it may not be that they want to be a coder, or it may not be that they want to be the traditional game developer, but understanding game development, it's a combination of a lot of different ideas, a lot of different thoughts. We have people that are former pilots, former military, former, you can go on with all sorts of whatever these formers are, but not everybody necessarily has the traditional game development background. The thing that they do have in common is that they're very passionate about video games, very passionate about the craft, and many times very passionate about the license, and they know the license really well. But it's definitely a way to get in, and Karthik touched on this, but QA is a good way to get in the door, and QA is used a lot of time, especially within our studio, as a farm team, and we use them. In fact, QA is most of where our production team comes from, our producers, and then you could even look at Jen O'Neill, who used to be our studio head after Karthik and Guha left. Now she is co-head of Blizzard Entertainment, which is a global company, and she's a former QA person, which is pretty incredible. So, I mean, we work on very large scale games. The bar is really high when it comes to being an artist or a designer or an engineer on a game like Blizzard or like Diablo. It requires a high degree of craftsmanship. So we value craftsmanship as pretty high. And I think we talked a little bit about being part of this global company, the larger teams. I think a while ago, one of our studios guys was talking about how they were part of, a game that became a billion-dollar franchise after multiple games. Whatever that franchise was, like even Skylanders, after multiple games, it eventually got to a billion units. But the games that we're working on are already at just in the game itself in the billions. So it's in the billion-dollar franchise. So they're big titles. I don't know if that answered and over-answered your question, probably. So, I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you something else, just because we had a question from the audience with regards, since you do work with a lot of the colleges around the region, the question was, are there specific post-secondary degrees that would help students enter the field?
Yes, I think one of the amazing things, and I just popped up one of the slides that has some of the local schools that are available now. When I got into the industry and when Karthik got in the industry, there weren't game degrees that you could go to. And then little by little, you'd see some. So RPI started a game degree and you could get a game degree program there. But now within the region, actually the best schools in the games industry are mostly in the Northeast. So you look into the top 25 Princeton reviews, they're Northeast, California, Northeast, Utah, California, or Utah, or not Utah, but Northeast again, all the way down. So RIT, RPI, Champlain College up in Vermont. SUNY Poly has a good degree, and UAlbany starting a degree. NYU has one of the, it's either number 1 or number 2 on a regular basis. Marist, WPI, Drexel, I can go on, but there are game degrees you can get from game development, but you could also go all the way up to a master's and now a PhD in game design. You could be a doctor of game design. How crazy is that? I mean, it's a little strange, but it's just because the industry is so huge and the need is so great. We are, I think Karthik, you had said that you're looking for 30 positions right now. We're easily looking for that and more. There's a dire need for good game developers, and that comes from art, design, engineering, in all the fields, all the parts of the fields.
Well, I just want to say thank you again, just as it relates to both your time today, but also your willingness to collaborate. And the fact that you are still in contact with the three school districts, East Greenbush, Averill Park, and Skodak, as it relates to their classes, and still playing an active role. Your involvement in STEM education in the region is to be not only commended, but really we're grateful to have people like you who are willing to dedicate the time to do the things that you're doing. So just in closing, if, as I mentioned before, with regards to having parents who are going to be seeing this as well, is there any final thoughts you have that if you were planting a seed, so to speak, as it relates to the industry, that you would share with educators or parents?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing is just getting to know what's in the industry. There's a lot of stuff that if your child or you're interested as a kid in game development, stick with it. There's a lot of opportunity. It's a long-term career path. I think when we first were getting into this, you didn't think that game development was a possible career. These are well-paid, highly paid in some cases careers, and there's longevity. It's not early on. It was bouncing from studio to studio, nomad. But now I've been here 23 years and working for Vicarious Visions, now Albany or Blizzard Albany. But it's a valid career path, and we're starting to see that STEM ecosystem you talked about in reality. My son is going to Champlain College to become a video game developer in user interface, and he started when I started. He was born when I started at Vicarious Visions, and now has become a college student. He'll be transitioning into the workforce, and I think Tobi's got a similar story with her kids, but we're starting to see that STEM ecosystem happening.
Nice. All right. Well, listen, again, Steve, thank you so much. Appreciate your time today and you sharing information. And as you had mentioned, our next guest speaker is going to be Tobi Saulnier from First Playable Productions. She is the CEO. She is also, as I mentioned about Karthik, she is herself a pioneer, so to speak, in the capital region as it relates to being on the ground floor when there was no industry here, and really being one of the first companies. And also, and hopefully this comes across correctly, but as a female in what I would consider a male-dominated industry, she is quite the person to aspire to, or inspire young women with regards to having an interest in the industry. So without further ado, Tobi, welcome and thank you for joining us today. And please share some information about yourself and about your company.
Thank you. There's so many exciting things happening in this area with Velan Studios and their amazing games, Blizzard, Albany, instead of Vicarious Visions. It's going to take me a while to remember that. Warner Brothers, there's some amazing large-scale efforts here. And however, there's also another side of the industry. So in order to fill out the information, I thought I would focus on some of the other types of games that are out there, primarily social impact games. So I'm going to see if I can figure out how to share my screen and present properly here. Here we go. Everything is different. All right, so I think this is working, right?
It is.
So First Playable, yes, indeed. When I started First Playable, it was inspired by the desire to create more of an industry here, so that we weren't dependent on one studio as the fortunes went up and down. I was very cognizant that people who came here to work would need alternative places to go. And so it's very exciting seeing so much of the activity currently. Our mission remains in the social impact area. So I got into games specifically because I was so excited about the opportunity and potential of games in education. And as I found out, many other areas somewhat related to education in terms of just like changing people's attitudes. So we're a pretty small team, as you can see, pretty small team, pretty diverse team, really focused on underserved audiences. So we tend to do the games that not everybody else is clamoring to do, but deserve to be made, usually for people who can't make their own games. So We do work with a lot of big brands. We've been working with Disney since we started, work with Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, and that really is probably more than half our revenue, because that's the ongoing industry and ecosystem, and that's where we can get some sustainable funding to do the social impact side of the world. So, so these are just some examples. Cooking Mama is a huge cooking game, and I was talking to Jen yesterday. I'm like, yes, we do a lot of cooking games. We're doing another huge cooking game right now, and we've done 5 other cooking games. One of them was for teaching math and science. So we get to spend all day talking about food. So it's kind of entertaining. So, but we do a lot of other games. We have pretty diverse interests. These are just very interested in making games that that kids would love to play, and not just kids, adults too. So you'll see this as an example. So one of the games that we made that's very different than the entertainment games is Fiscal Shift. This is a game we made 2 election seasons ago with Wilson Center and Brookings Institute in Washington, D.C. to educate voters on all the financial policies that Congress is deciding on. And Brookings Institute continues to update the information in this game with our help. Occasionally we have to fix something that they've accidentally overwritten. But this basically lets you actually explore all the decisions that Congress is making that might contribute to our federal deficit. Certainly deficits continue to increase, but this was interesting in terms of making a game that voters of all persuasions, whatever their political leanings, they could jump in and get information, not feel like they're being lectured to, and explore all of these choices and see how it impacted spending. For instance, some things they might hear about as being very expensive, they would find out has almost no impact on the budget. So I encourage everyone to go play it. As I found out, a lot of high school teachers and college teachers are using this game with their students, but it was really intended for the general population as well. But most people aren't like, oh, I guess I'll learn about the federal budget. So I don't know how much adults play this game. So, but it continues to be updated, which is super exciting. Another game that we did, if I can figure out how to use my arrow key and proceed. Oh, this is another game we did with the National Institute of Oceanic Atmospheric Science and the Environmental Law Institute. This was a game to teach communities about resilience, and community resilience has a lot to do with the give and take of how do you please all these stakeholders and prevent any one group from taking the brunt of these huge storms and other events that are impacting especially coastal communities and more the entire country. So this game focused on a number of areas that are featured there, mostly fishery and coastal communities, and basically put you in the shoes of deciding how to put your resources with a group of other people. This started out as a board game that we made, which is really interesting. I think there should be one that's themed around school boards, because it has a lot of the similar types of decisions that I've had to participate in when I've been on a school board, in terms of like, well, there's this stakeholder and this stakeholder, we have finite budget. Like, how do we make these trade-offs and come up with consensus of how to proceed? In the digital version that we made, so it could get further outreach, it's not so much a social decision-making experience as you're the mayor of a town, you're trying to keep all your stakeholders happy. How do you make decisions as to where to put your funds and who's going to benefit, who's going to suffer from each of your decisions? We could also make one of these games for Troy, for instance. A very interesting topic to be making a game to teach these types of skills. We've also made a few games related to high school and younger to some degree. For instance, this game called Smokescreen, it was underwritten by CVS. We did this game with Yale that teaches education on vaping and to some extent on peer pressure. So in this game, there's a story, it's narrative adventure. You're making decisions, making friends, being faced with a lot of decisions, and you're trying to maintain your reputation, but all the things high school students or even middle school students might care about. But it also has a ton of information for kids about vaping and smoking, because they're being faced with these choices very, very, very early, depending where you are in the country. So this was a very exciting use of games, and what typically when we work with a group like Yale, we'll make the game and then they do some efficacy testing to see, did this actually help affect attitudes of teens. And they've had very positive responses from their experiments and have done some publications related to, and then they continue to support it and make sure this is available to kids. I should note that most of the games we do are free. All the games I've talked about so far are free. And that tends to be the nature of social impact games, because the goal is to have an impact on society and has a mission that's, hopefully has some funding by people, not just ourselves, but some larger funding organization. This is another super interesting game we did also with Yale, but also with the Fellow in Family Planning. This was a game specifically aimed at Hispanic youth. And in fact, the first version was in Spanish, and then they wanted an English translation of it. So this game was very educational to me and my staff, because we got to learn about all types of party drugs, things like that. But the goal of this game was to really give kids the opportunity to explore a lot of choices, get facts, get information, including things like, oh, you had unprotected sex, like what should you do? This woman who was running this project was very motivated to try to stem the misinformation that teens are facing when they're trying to navigate these choices, usually in a party situation. So hence the setting of this game. Again, eye-opening and a good opportunity for all us developers to become very well educated when it comes to sex ed and drug education. Here's a game that we're working on right now. We're working with Girls Make Games, and they had a team of girls shown here come up with a game concept, and they implemented it with help from another programmer called Shredded Secrets. It's the anti-bullying game. It's on Steam right now. And what they want to do is bring it to Nintendo and to Nintendo Switch and possibly PlayStation. Nintendo knows that we have a social focus and that we're a benefit corporation trying to use our skills for social impact. So they hooked us up with these wonderful girls, and we are just in the process of getting this game ready to submit for Nintendo Switch. So this was a great example of high school students conceiving of and making a game. And when we've done programs with students previously, it's been a great way for them to articulate and build narratives about the situations they're facing in real life. So it's not just making a game, but in many ways very similar to creative writing in terms of an outlet for teens to express some of the big challenges they're facing. And obviously bullying is a huge issue in schools. There's other types of education as well. So I talked about some things that were kind of on the social education side. We've also done games to try to provide education to adults. And I think these will be interesting for people who are, thinking about games, and especially depending on the teen, they may be like, oh, I'm not that much into fighting, or I don't really play those video games, and so maybe games aren't for me. But these games represent that there's a lot of social benefit that can come out of games, and games that need to be made for these purposes, because they are more effective in education. So this is an example of game that was made for ER doctors to teach them to more quickly transfer patients to trauma centers, because there's like 30,000 patients die unnecessarily just because they don't get from the emergency room to a trauma center fast enough. So this was a fascinating game, just like I mentioned with the Sexperto game. In this case, we had to learn all kinds of medical terminology just to be able to make this game. So being a quick learner is really important, as it is for most jobs in life. But this was fascinating. And I got to appreciate it when I was in a big car accident, ended up in the trauma center. I'm like, yeah, I'm appreciating what this game is trying to do, because there's a lot of split-second decisions they have to make. And fortunately, in my case, the first place I got sent to was a trauma center. So I was very fortunate. This is another game in the medical category of lung health. So often we work with other small companies in the area to try to help them use game technology in the furtherance of their goals. Sometimes those are social impact organizations, and sometimes they're technology organizations like this one, which was a company started by a quadriplegic who wanted to find ways to play a game through an interface or harmonica-like interface. And so as we worked with them, we kind of steered that company towards the what you call an incentive spirometer. Anybody who's been stuck in a hospital knows and hates what those are, the little plastic breathing devices. And we're like, well, if we could only make this more interesting for patients, maybe they would comply. So if you just had an operation, if you don't actually do your lung exercises, you may end up with pneumonia. There's quadriplegics. If they don't do lung exercises constantly through their entire life, they're going to lose capacity and lose the abilities that they do have. And one of the most exciting applications that this company has focused on through working with Albany Med for all of these is children with cystic fibrosis, where we can have a huge benefit on quality of life and even longevity by using games to teach them how to do lung exercises and monitor their lung health, so that they can learn to self-modulate their condition, but also have intervention faster. So this company is doing quite well now, because most of this audience, other than post-op, where I guess you're stuck in a hospital, and during COVID, you don't want to go into a hospital to do a breathing test. You don't want to bring those patients into a risk area just to do a routine breathing test. So this company, Zephyr RX is the name of that company now, is doing lung function tests remotely, which is super exciting. We're working with them to add some game components to the standard lung function tests as well, primarily just to get compliance, because these lung tests are, speaking from my own experience, very, very frustrating when your lungs are not doing well. And if we can just create some entertainment, as you can see, the games we did across all the demographics, we had kids games, we have older people, so we put in golf and fishing and NASCAR, because of course everybody likes NASCAR. But so this is interesting area. Another area which has huge potential, again, very much of interest to anybody who's interested in medicine and health and well-being, is that this is another researcher we're working with that's using games to help mitigate mild cognitive impairment. So that would be the onset of Alzheimer's, by doing exercise and memory games at the same time. So this is also one of our NIH, National Institute of Health, funded projects with this researcher to create this game. And in Troy Night Out, we usually have it out there to try out and try to convince people to try pedaling and doing memory games. I wanted to just pause at the end here just to share some resources for teachers and parents, because we work with teachers a lot as a developer, since that is part of our mission to further education. Every year from 2006 to 2019, we did Games in Education Symposium, which is a free professional leadership symposium that we underwrote and funded and brought in experts from across the country. So the website has a lot of resources from that. We did not attempt to do this during COVID. I am hoping in 2022, we will be back to being able to run and have this community service program again. And as part of it, the Teen Game Workshop was a program that we ran in concert with this, that gave teenagers the opportunity, again, free, to have a 1-week program to come and learn how to make a game, because we're very cognizant that people don't have resources. It creates an uneven playing field. So any programs we run, we try to make sure they are free, much like our games. There's Playful Learning Alliance, that little button I have on the bottom is a Facebook group of educators. If anybody wants to join that group and learn from some amazing people, I'm happy to connect you in there, or just mention me when you put in the join request. I'm there not because I'm an educator, it's just because I've, a benefactor who's helped those educators get started and created that community in the first place. But I know I'm not an educator, so all I do is admire the amazing work that they're doing. One thing that parents run into is, unlike a movie, your kids are playing something and it's really hard to know what they're playing, or even feel like you can be knowledgeable or have a conversation with them. A lot of times it's just described as, oh, they're just playing Xbox, or, they're just playing games. And there's so much richness there that can be had if parents can have a conversation with this huge part of their kids' lives. So Common Sense Media, I often refer parents to, because they'll give you a summary of the game. It gives you conversation topics that you could have related to the game. And it gives you feedback just so you know some of the negatives, like in terms of if there's violence or other aspects that you're trying to manage with respect to your child's media consumption. My kids were I guess when I started making games with Karthik way back when, my kids were 3 and 11. So I've got to see up close the struggles of a parent with kids with video games while also making games. And so it's an area that I've been very interested in. I should mention that eSports is huge. Many kids are involved in eSports and parents don't even know that they are, because teens just assume parents wouldn't be interested. Even my own son was managing 3 different esports teams, and I had to mom stalk him on the internet to find this out. So then we could not schedule dinner during tournaments and have a normal life. So this is becoming more and more supported. You'll be hearing later today more about the esports programs. We had the big ECAC tournament. It was hosted in Albany in 2018. It's just a huge area. It's definitely a sport. Kids learn all kinds of things about teamwork and everything they would learn in a more traditional sport. There's also a number of sites like Minecraft, EDU, and Unity's teacher portal. So there's many references out there, but I just encourage people just to go learn about the digital world. The one thing to keep in mind is, just like when I travel and I go visit a country, I might study up about France. I might try to learn some French, but I'm always going to feel a little awkward or a little bit like a tourist. And that's what I often console myself with when I go into some of these worlds, is like, well, I'm always going to feel a little awkward because I'm a tourist and my kids might be natives. But because I'm a tourist, it can be really enriching because I'm going to learn so much from the people in that world. So I definitely encourage people to get over the reticence and just kind of dive in and just recognize that you're always going to feel a little bit like a tourist. So with that, I'll hand it back to Jim.
Thank you, Toby. Just a couple things here. I just want to ask you a question, but I also, Mike Lezinski from UAlbany is going to be, he's going to be our last speaker after Jamey Stevenson. And I'm hoping he can talk a little bit about esports also, because I know that UAlbany has a pretty good program there. And just as it relates to a question for you from our audience, what would you suggest from your perspective for teachers? What can they do as it relates to trying to encourage their students, especially those students who are females or maybe minority students or binary students? What would you, any tips that you could offer educators as to what they could be doing to encourage students to consider careers in gaming or to learn more about gaming?
Yeah, the industry, and it's not the only industry that has this issue, but I mean, in some places it's not that welcoming of women or diverse people. And that definitely is an issue, just like engineering, which is my original focus, electrical engineering, or my daughter who's in robotics engineering. It can be very challenging. In games, I think we have one advantage in that there's so much richness to games. It's not just technology, like I think Steve was describing. There's art and story and narrative. And when we have worked with teams before, we've often used these narrative style game engines where kids can just jump in and just start writing stories, putting art in, putting in their story, and not to be too gender focused, but I definitely find that many young women find that more interesting entry point, because they're interested in society, they're interested in relationships, they're interested in moral dilemmas, and this allows them to dive into the area that's very motivating to them. And then they learn some code along the way to get that done. So when we did the teen game workshop, when we've done it previously, we tried to have the track for kids who really want to do an action game, kind of modeling their heroes, like the Blizzard games or, Knockout City, they want to make an action-based game. And then we have a track based on narrative and storytelling. And so that's one approach that I find just helps students feel like there's something in it for them. I can relate to it. When I was in college, I didn't want to do programming because I'm like, I'm not like those people. Like, I'm never going to fit in. I don't want to be a programmer because I don't look like them. So.
Well, listen, thank you. Not only just for joining us today, but for the resources that you shared during your presentation. Greatly appreciate that. And also just the perspective of, First Playable, from your point of view with regards to the games that you produce. Certainly are unique with regards to focusing on social issues and education driven. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. So thank you so much for your time today. We greatly appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So we're going to move on from businesses, and my apologies, we're going to be running a little bit over, but these last two guest speakers that we have, wanted to include them because one is from a community organization, not for profit, and the other is from a higher education institution. And it's important for these folks to be able to talk because from the perspective of trying to build a community, so to speak, and also higher ed programs that are out there that students may be interested in, we're looking forward to hearing from them as well. Jamey Stevenson is with us. He is the executive director for the Tech Valley Game Space, which is basically a resource, that is located up in Troy in the Tech Valley. God, it's a makerspace up there. Jamey, help me out here.
Center of gravity.
Center of gravity. Good God, thank you so much. And basically, in a nutshell, and Jamey's going to talk a little bit about this, but they provide programs to both adults and students who have an interest in gaming, and they could be individuals who are just starting out, or who have a little bit of knowledge, but all sorts of different programs that they offer that Jamey is going to talk a little bit about in addition to himself. So Jamey, without further ado, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here. Let me see if I can share some slides here. Okay. Can folks see those slides and hear me reasonably well?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. Yeah, so it was great to hear the previous speakers, and these are all folks who are sort of pillars of the local game industry from my perspective. And so I wanted to talk a bit about a slightly different topic, but that connects in with all these things, which is really what we focus on at Tech Valley Game Space, which is building up these sort of mutual support networks with a particular focus on independent game developers and also aspiring game makers. Jim suggested that I maybe just talk a bit about my own path into games, and particularly I thought I might just mention sort of the educational journey and just a couple of the stops along the way that were significant, from getting to the point of being somebody who just had an interest in games to actually making them professionally. So I'm going to start there, and then I'll talk a little bit more about Tech Valley Game Space, because some of what we do connects quite closely to some of my own experiences trying to learn game making. I'm Jamey, as was mentioned. I won't mention too much about this because I think it's been well covered, and I'm really glad that Tobi talked about the kind of social impact side of gaming that First Playable does a magnificent job working on. Some of my own career has also intersected with that. So in addition to working on commercial games, I've also worked as a game designer for an artificial intelligence research lab, which was kind of a different style from what I was used to in the kind of commercial game sector. So this was one project that I worked on at this studio, which is called DeepMind, that does a lot of kind of work with AI research and applying it for social good. I've also done some work as well at the intersection of games and health. So this is one of my kind of proudest moments, was being able to just contribute as a freelance designer some design concepts to the Remission series, which is a series of games by a company called Hope Lab that is designed for young adults who've been diagnosed with cancer. And the idea is to kind of create an educational game that will help them with treatment adherence and kind of reinforcing the reasons why it's important and beneficial to adhere to a treatment regimen. And I was able to kind of work on these design ideas and collaborate with my younger sister, who's a cancer survivor. So that was a really meaningful project to me personally. I have my own little studio, Spoony Bird, locally, working on some narrative-focused games. I'm currently creating this kind of wacky 90s themed game called Ding Dong Ditch. And I also, as an independent developer, create my own just kind of tiny games, typically released for free. They range all over the place, but they're often things that are inspired by something that's personally meaningful for me. And one of the kind of themes that I've been enjoying exploring is local history. We ran an event back in, I think it was 2015, that encouraged people to make games inspired by local history. And that just happened to be a really fruitful topic for me, as it turns out. So I've since kind of gone on a spree of creating games that are rooted in the history and culture of particularly Troy, but the region as a whole as well. And then mostly what I'm going to talk about is the kind of community development work that I do at Tech Valley Gamespace, which we founded back in 2014 as a way to kind of encourage more local developers to be able to connect and support each other. So that's what I do. Let me just talk about a couple of the kind of steps along my educational journey and how I got to the point of becoming a professional game developer. So this is my kind of starting point. I was born and raised in the capital region. So this is me in Nassau, grew up in Nassau and also kind of all over the region. And I loved games from a really early age. And also had a very keen fashion sense, as you can see, which I've retained. So rather than going into fashion, I ended up, deciding that I really wanted to be a game developer for a living. And I would play games and, you would finish a game and you'd see a big list of credits at the end. So I knew on some level that people made these things, but I just had absolutely no idea of how to get from where I was as a young kid, in this area where I didn't know that anybody made games in the capital region at the time. So how do I get from the point of playing games to actually being one of those names in the credits? And it was something I really wanted to figure out and spent a lot of time trying to figure out. So when I got to high school, I went to Columbia High School, and at the time, they didn't have, a game development specific class, which is why I've been really proud to be able to collaborate with folks like Jim and Steve and some of the instructors from Columbia and other local schools to help develop some more coursework there. But at the time, what they did have was a coding elective that you could take. So that already was a big kind of step forward. And I also wasn't coming from the perspective of somebody who really wanted to learn coding, was never especially like an engineering or math focused student, kind of more gravitated to the humanities side of things. But I wanted to make games, and I knew that this was an avenue to pursue that. So, I ended up dabbling in coding and making some, I'm sure very cringeworthy games to look back on since I didn't know what I was doing. But I got that kind of early exposure, which was really important. But I really wanted a mentor, and I couldn't really find one still. I wanted a mentor so badly that I actually wandered into Vicarious Visions one day as a high school student, just because they were the only place locally that I knew actually, developed games, and just like asked the first person I saw, like, hey, I'm an eager high school student. I would love to work here one day. Like, can you give me any advice? And they were incredibly gracious to share some really useful advice with me. But that was kind of the length that I was going to try to find a mentor. And so one of the reasons why we focus so much on mentorship at Tech Valley Gamespace is I really wanted, I felt that pain at the time of not being able to find a mentor. And I really wanted other local people who might have an interest in games to be able to more easily make those connections. I also spent a few semesters at Hudson Valley, and that was really important kind of transitional period for me to help build up some of the study skills that I needed. And again, not game specific classes, but was able to take a few more kind of coding classes there to keep developing those skills. But the most important part of my time there was really to, in a cost accessible way, be able to build up some more study skills and get into the kind of college mindset, I suppose. And from there, I ended up going to this school called Full Sail University. Folks were mentioning that, back at the time when they were going to university, there weren't game development degrees. I came along at a time when there were two in the entire country. There was DigiPen in Washington State, and there was Full Sail in Florida. So I ended up going to Full Sail because I knew that I really wanted to make games. So a game development specific degree felt like a good fit. And one specific memory I have from this experience was that when I was at Full Sail and we got to our first coding class, we lost half of our students in our degree program. They all switched majors to something else because it was quite daunting. And in most of their cases, it was their first exposure to coding. So I really felt well served just that I had been exposed to it. I was by no means an expert in coding by this time, but I knew what it was. I had had the opportunity to try it out. And I think that that's so important, is to just get some early exposure to these things. If we want to open up the pipeline to a wider range of people, then just letting people kind of sample it, try it out, and find what they like is a really essential part of the process. So that's another reason why we're passionate at Tech Valley Game Space about introducing some game making classes as early on as we can for students. And then from there, I got my first job out of university at First Playable, working for Tobi right when First Playable was starting up. And so, yeah, Tobi gave me my first kind of break in the industry as just sort of a generalist coder. And then I went on to work for a number of different studios from there, doing a variety of things, working as an artificial intelligence programmer, and then wanting to very much make a lateral shift over to game design, which I was able to do. So I worked as a game designer for Tag Games and then for DeepMind, which was the AI research lab that I mentioned at the top. So games, I've been able to kind of stay in games over the past 15 plus years. And it's been a really fulfilling career with a lot of variety to it. Starting off doing one thing that was more kind of engineering focused, but really coming from the desire to just create and kind of the design side and the creative side, and being able to shift my job role and career while staying within games to focus more on that area in my day-to-day. So that's been very rewarding. So with that said, let me see where I'm at on time here. So just to give the whirlwind tour here of Tech Valley Game Space. So we're a 501c3 organization, and our emphasis is on supporting independent game developers in the capital region, and also working to make game development more accessible to a wider range of practitioners. So we started just as a community of game makers back in late 2014, just as sort of a meetup group that would meet on a weekly basis to help connect local folks. The kind of two co-founders, myself and Taro Omiya, we were each indie game developers who were working from home, or in Taro's case, was working out of a local library, I think out of Niskayuna, and just felt very isolated. It can be very isolating if you're a solo game developer and you haven't kind of connected with that community yet. And that makes it a very fragile thing, even for folks that want to do it. So we thought, you know, there must be other folks in the region also trying to kind of make a go of it as individuals or small groups. And eventually we were able to really kind of find those folks. And they sort of came out of the woodwork, which was very gratifying. So we started very early on a co-working space, really just within the first few months of the time we started the meetup group, because there seemed to be enough folks with an interest. And we currently still run that out of the Center of Gravity at the moment, but we have some kind of dedicated space within Center of Gravity, and they've been very supportive. We work closely with them. And we have a paying membership who pays for monthly access to that. Currently, our members comprise folks from 9 different, mostly very tiny indie teams, and also sort of a constellation of freelancers and other folks, entrepreneurs. We have a board of directors that consists of folks from local studios like Vicarious Visions and Wolfjaw, and also local universities and some other universities within the Northeast. Yeah, and we really emphasize a lot sort of support and collaboration. So a lot of the kind of tenor of our community and the way we run things is about creating opportunities for people to support each other and encourage each other and share knowledge. We've had all kinds of range of different games from a variety of different creators from our community. They range from, you know, kind of action titles for our mobile phones to alternative controller games with wearable hats as controllers, to 3D games, to story-focused games for mental health and more. So in the top left there, there's a game called Open Spaces, which is created by a studio called Queenship. So this is just one example of a team that came out of our community and some of our events and mentorship programs that we host. And that's been very exciting to see some more kind of new talent emerging from some of our programs. In terms of how we support local developers, we have a few kind of key programs. Protostar is a fund that we started up to support independent game developers with very small amounts of early stage funding. to let them explore some kind of creative and innovative concepts and build a slightly more polished sort of demo. So it's not full funding to create a game, but it's some very early stage funding that can help out. Liftoff is a diversity incubator program that we host, where often first-time creators will create a game over the course of 7 weeks with a lot of support from mentors and also from each other. So that's a targeted program specifically for underrepresented groups. Orbit is an ongoing series of free mentorship groups that anybody can join, and they're even easier to participate in at the moment since they're all virtual. So you can hop onto our Discord server, which is where we host these video chat meetups. And pretty much every week we have some kind of talk or discussion going on. So that's a great thing to connect to or connect students to if you have any folks who are interested. Those are open to folks of all ages and experience levels. And we host lots of different events and classes. So yeah, we do a lot in terms of community building. Let me just kind of see what else. So I'm going to kind of wrap things up momentarily. I know we're going a bit over time generally. We do a lot in terms of outreach, so we're really open to collaboration. If you have any ideas, I'd love to discuss it with anyone and everyone. Want to really kind of like link up more of the pieces of the pipeline in terms of workforce development, skill training, all that good stuff. So these are some examples of some prior things we've done to kind of support other local efforts that may not have originated with us, but where we can kind of play a key support role. So that includes things like outreach to indie developers for the regional developer survey that Jim was mentioning at the top. Some stats from, I've done some kind of game dev themed startup presentations and pitch events. Showcases of local developers at kind of local gaming conferences so we can have more of a presence for local creators. And of course, things like Questar Summer STEM Research Institute, which I've been really proud to be a part of. Last but not least, just wanted to mention a couple of specific kind of educational services that we offer. So knowledge sharing and kind of connecting people at different levels of experience is a really pivotal part of what we do. And we do that not only in our own space and via our own virtual events, but we go out to schools and collaborate with all kinds of other educational organizations throughout the region to do that. So these are some of the kind of services that we currently offer and have offered in the past. So we've worked with other organizations to organize classes, skill training workshops for students and for instructors as well that want to learn a bit more about game development. We do curriculum development. We have some lesson materials that are also available to license out. If you'd like to consult with some game developers, we kind of do a lot, both in terms of game making and also in terms of the education sector. So we're kind of have a bit of both of those languages that we can speak. So we enjoy being able to help out, bridge those gaps, and so on. And one of the reasons why we think it's really important to connect these kind of two audiences, indie developers and aspiring game developers, is that they really have a lot to teach each other, and there's a lot of ways they can kind of help each other and help create a more stable foundation for our region to grow. So I talk a lot about this kind of virtuous cycle where independent game developers, one of our biggest needs is kind of stability. You're often kind of living project to project and things like this. And it can be one of the more unstable sides of game development compared to maybe a larger studio that has a bit more stability. So you get more creative freedom, which is the nice side, but you often need to have something to help kind of fill in the gaps between projects and things like that. And that's where I think the kind of teaching can come in. If those indie developers can get paid to pass on some of their knowledge to students that want to learn while still keeping the programs actually, free and accessible, that's a lot of what we strive to do and do consistently. So I really want to kind of continue to make that virtuous cycle work for our region. So there's a variety of different kind of things that we offer, from just one-off kind of talks that we can do to any group that is interested in learning more about game making, We host sort of try it out first time game making activities using a set of accessible tools. You don't need any prior coding experience or anything like that to start making games these days. And we can kind of help host those. We do lots of kind of showcase events. We've been doing a monthly showcase for many years at the Arts Center in Troy of local creator projects. And we do them at various other events, including some school expos and things like that. And also some kind of dedicated game jams where there's kind of challenges to create a game over a short period of time, a bit like a hackathon or things like that. So those are some examples of some of the types of educational activities that we have organized in the past and that we do with various partners. Here's just a partial list. There was no way I could not assemble a complete list of all the different folks we've worked with, but I'm really, I'm always excited when I say like we love to collaborate. I'm not kidding. Like these are just some of the kind of various partners and venues where we've taught or done some sort of game development education throughout the region, and would love to kind of add all of you to that list and your organizations. So if you do want to reach out to me, you can do so. You can reach me at director@techvalleygamespace.org. If you want to join our Discord, which is where a lot of our online community discussion happens, then there's instructions on our website. If you go to techvalleygamespace.org/Discord, we have a virtual events calendar where you can see what's coming up. And yeah, feel free to check us out online, follow us, and subscribe to our newsletter and all that good stuff. So thanks again for having me. Really appreciate it.
Jamey, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate the information, as well as partnering with you over the past couple of summers that we have. And we are talking, we did before COVID, and hopefully continuing conversations about some other opportunities going forward to be working with you. So thank you again for joining us today and your time. And last but not least, want to welcome Mike Lezinski, who has been very kind and very patient with his time today. Mike has been with us since the beginning of today's event. Mike is a professor over at UAlbany, as well as, I guess, the umbrella, the College of Emergency Preparedness, Homeland Security, and Cybersecurity College, which is under UAlbany's umbrella, so to speak. And Mike is here to talk with us today about both the video game development programming that UAlbany has recently introduced, as well as his involvement with the eSports program with UAlbany. So Mike, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely, I'm happy to be here. So let me just get my slides queued up. And just like, can you let me know if you can see those slides?
Okay. I can see them.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, thanks so much. As Jim mentioned, I have been here from the beginning, and I'm just happy to be in the mix with so many great minds here in the Capital District as it relates to gaming and as it relates to education, from the perspective of major studios, international studios, independent studios that are pushing the boundaries of the integration of hardware and software and mixed reality, augmented reality, social games, social impact games, and serious games, as well as community development and education. I'm just happy to, as I said, be in the mix here. We'll talk a little bit about what's happening with gaming at UAlbany. Let's see here, as Jim mentioned, I'm a professor of practice in the College of Emergency Preparedness, Homeland Security, and Cybersecurity at UAlbany. I'm also the director and head coach of UAlbany eSports. My work is in emerging technologies, entrepreneurship, and the arts. And a question I have to answer many times with my students: yes, I'm a gamer, as Karthik mentioned, referencing the Atari days and the Coleco days. Jamey had a shot of the NES system as well, and everything in between. If it's a game, I've been excited to try to play it. So I am indeed a gamer. Emerging technologies encompasses many different areas, very much interdisciplinary areas. So in addition to the gaming work, I also am a coordinator for the Makerspace and the Drone Lab here on campus, as well as the eSports and gaming initiatives. This is a picture of a drone that my students printed, 3D printed and assembled using open source hardware, using our 3D printers. And it kind of represents one of the aspects of learning we feel is very important is experiential learning. So providing students with the opportunity to actually take part in that. And we actually had, I believe, 3 students from the Questar program here in our drone lab just last week, flying drones hands-on and learning about the impact of drones. We're also thinking about things quite broadly you know, the idea of interdisciplinary, sort of multidisciplinary thinking has come up many times today. And so when you present a challenge on the left here to our students to say, here is a FPV ground-based robotic vehicle that you're going to assemble from scratch, very much like Legos, with 100 pieces and circuit boards and motors and all sorts of different components. It's a Python programmable robot that has all sorts of sensors and actuators. That's a challenge. It's an experiential challenge. It's a real world challenge. And for the folks working in the industry, game development industry, you know that there are challenges and there are problems to be solved, and also new things that happen all the time. It's a very dynamic space. And so by connecting the makerspace, connecting our drone lab, connecting our esports and gaming, we're really pushing students to develop those skills. And at the same time, we like to have fun. So my former student is holding a soccer ball. We put the robots together, we program them, we drive them, we work with them, but we also play robot soccer. We play real life Rocket League because we want students to think about how to maneuver them, not only in a straight line or in a pre-programmed manner, but also think about the dynamic nature of playing a game and what the impact of physics, the impact of the friction of the rug, the impact of all these environmental considerations play on something such as a game. Student success for us, I think, is really represented by the ability to prototype, the ability to experiment, the ability to think in terms of innovation, interdisciplinary thinking, creative thinking, problem solving, communication, collaboration, experiential learning opportunities, and drive. My background is in the arts, in the liberal arts. I don't have formal degrees and training in many respects in engineering or in the technology field. I was always fascinated by technology, and it was a big part of my life. And I followed many different paths, I think, kind of concurrently, which I think in many respects, is something that has led to some of the great projects and great people that I've had the opportunity to work with. So one of the questions that has come up is gaming just programming and just engineering? And I think that, as we've heard from our industry, speakers today, there are so many different jobs and so many different opportunities. And I think diversity in every aspect, as well as through the degrees and programs, is really celebrated and is really important to the success of such an interdisciplinary field. We're very excited to be in our brand new eTech building here on campus, where I'm Zooming from today. Our makerspace has tripled in size and is really a dynamic space, which is full of a lot of activity and excitement and engagement from our students. And I think tapping into that as an educator is really what it's all about. And I'm very lucky to have amazing and wonderful students. In terms of esports, Tobi mentioned the ECAC, which is one of the conferences that we participate in. We participate in many conferences, and we play over 300 games per year, 300 official collegiate esports games. We have one of the biggest teams in our conferences, I think one of the biggest teams in some respects in the country, at over 140 students, representing all class years and all majors. We participate in over a dozen titles, and we're super excited this year that the ECAC is launching a brand new title for the first time ever, Knockout City. And we're hoping to do quite well given our proximity to Velan Studios. Just goes to show you how dynamic esports and the gaming industry actually is. We're obviously rooting very much for Knockout City. Esports is free to participate for all of our students. We have a dedicated facility, and many times educators ask about the academic component. This is an extracurricular activity, so it is very important that students are also succeeding academically. They're going to class, they're doing well. This is one aspect of the college experience, and I'd be happy to talk more about the academic component in future conversations. We also have a code of conduct. The code of conduct is very important from the perspective of diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's an important consideration within the field of gaming, and so we put it right out front and make that a part of the discussion with all of our students interested in participating. This is one of the really most wonderful pictures, I think, from my time being a part of the team that's built some of these new initiatives here at UAlbany. This was the photo just before COVID, the spring of 2020. This is about 70% of our team. And for me, this represents the smiling faces, the excitement, the energy, the pride, and just the community that we're building around gaming. The best part of the gig, so to speak, the best part of the job is working with the students. And it's just an honor. It's just an honor. And I hope this, this excitement and this energy, translates. And this is another photo, which is very important to me as well, which is our first national championship that we won in Fortnite. Jin Long and Aldair were the top of the top in the ECAC. And this is a photo from our arena, which also shows, some of our computing setup and our overall kind of pride that we have in representing the university with our graphics and our jersey and the energy. This is the night they won, and the energy, as I said, is just it's really wonderful. And as educators, I know it's just so important to get that sort of energy back from how hard we all work. You all work in your respective areas, and so I really cherish these photos and these memories. And the exciting thing is, I think we're just getting started. One of the things we did during the pandemic, actually it preceded the pandemic, but it really kicked into gear during the pandemic, was we have social gaming. So if you're not interested or available or able to be in our competitive teams, we still welcome you, and we still want to provide opportunities for you to meet other students, to socialize, to take a break from your studies and play some games. So we, during the pandemic, as many of our students were forced to go home and were in some ways isolated and didn't see their friends and, just weren't able to engage as much as they are here on a college campus, we got together every Thursday night from 7 to 9. We still do. And it was just open to whatever games you wanted to play. And we have over 500 students that are on our Discord server and that are taking part in this opportunity. So I think part of the idea is that there's a multifaceted approach to gaming. Another aspect here is broadcasting. So Lucas and Suzanne and Amanda were interested in broadcasting one of our championship Overwatch games. So we very quickly set up a blue screen for them. We brought them into OBS. We set up a play-by-play and a commentary opportunity. And they were amazing. They're absolutely amazing. Lucas is very interested in streaming and casting. Suzanne has done amazing things in our makerspace in our drone lab and is working actually in the drone field right now while pursuing her master's degree. And Amanda received a job offer after graduating and is working full-time in eSports right now. And Amanda was also an English major. So it goes to show you the multi-dimensional aspect of the gaming industry is not just for a certain type of degree or a certain type of background. From the academic component, we're very excited that we're bringing online classes and programs in esports and in game design and development. In 2019, I developed a class on esports. It's a 3-credit college class, and it's run every semester since then, including summer semesters. And we've had to add multiple sections. Our new informatics concentration in game design and development includes game design and development classes, as well as foundational classes in informatics. And it's designed to provide students with really that interdisciplinary background, so that they can look at career pathways and internships in the game industry. And we're very, very fortunate, as Jim mentioned earlier, to have over 500 full-time employees, internationally recognized game studios, independent studios, and community development opportunities. It's really, really a wonderful area to be in. We have a micro-credential in esports as well, which is another opportunity to be recognized for expertise and work in this area. And as I mentioned, we're in many respects, I think, just getting started. I think there'll continue to be more opportunities to offer students the ability to study this area. Conferences, workshops, hackathons, networking, it's all really important, and it's important to continue to collaborate with others to provide these opportunities. Not only do we like to work hard, but we like to play hard. So I took some students to a virtual reality cafe, an escape room cafe. Jelani on the left has his virtual reality headset on, and Manuel on the right is working with a virtual reality headset, developing an active shooter response simulator in the game engine Unity. I think that being involved with games, it's important to study the technology. It's important to develop your skills, but it's also important to have fun, to experience new things, to push yourself to think about, a broad horizon of different forms of expression, different types of games, different experiences, and in emerging technologies, that's what it's all about. Facebook discussed the metaverse, which has been a concept that's been around for quite some time, and their rebranding and their pivot into this area, and something like that has a direct line to gaming. And gaming, I think, will continue to influence the world in increasingly important ways. So thinking about what that means and being a part of that conversation, I think is quite interesting. Collaborating with industry is also very important, as well as diversity. So Dr. Jennifer Goodall, the Vice Dean of CEHC, has put together an event called the State of Grace every year, modeled after the Grace Hopper event. Grace Hopper was a very important figure in computing and a very important figure with regard to women in computing. And we like to put together an event to provide our students with opportunities to have the discussion of diversity and gender within our field of informatics and technology. And so a couple weeks ago, we were very happy to have representatives and volunteers visit us from the game development studios here in the region and provide us with hands-on activities. So the students on the left are from my game development class and students who were welcomed to attend. And we went through I think a 2 or 3 hour hands-on game development experience. And that sort of collaboration where we're able to bring in folks from industry, people in the field to share their perspectives and their wisdom and their mentorship is just so critical. So we're very lucky and fortunate to have all of that as a part of our a part of our program. Just to kind of finish up here today, informatics is once again the program that I teach in, and game design and development at the bottom is our newest concentration, but we also serve many different areas, including interactive user experience, cybersecurity, social media, data analytics, software development, and information technology. And I think these areas touch upon just a few of the areas really that game design and development utilize. So we're very excited about the interdisciplinary work we're doing in that area. We have undergraduate, master's, and PhD programs, as well as a 4+1, where a student can come in and earn their undergraduate degree and their graduate degree in 5 years. And there's some tuition benefits and some other benefits that for students who are interested in that accelerated path really can benefit from. Of course, you can find out more about UAlbany from our admissions site. You can find out more about UAlbany eSports at our eSports site. And of course, my contact information is there, and you're more than welcome to reach out. I'm happy to connect with anyone on the call today. And finally, just like I say to our students, I also say to our fellow educators, industry partners, and people in the region, join us, connect with us, come visit us. Collaboration is really, I think, at the key of what we do and what we want to do. And as I said, I'm just so happy to be in such a wonderful region in this very exciting area, and to be a part of the mix, be a part of the conversation. So with that, I thank you. And Jim, thanks so much for the work that you're doing with your team and for inviting us to participate in this today.
I'm glad you could join us, Mike. Quick question for you, because this was submitted by the audience as it relates to esports. And I know that Steve Derrick had responded as it relates to gaming insomniacs, but we had a question with regards to if a school district is interested in beginning a program and integrating it into their high schools, how do they go about doing it? I'm guessing based on what Steve had shared, there's a resource right there, but do you have any other ideas or suggestions for the audience?
Yeah, I think just to touch on it briefly, because it is actually a great conversation to have. I think connect with your student interest, connect with your clubs, connect with your faculty. There's probably faculty that are interested in gaming. So there's opportunities to develop clubs. There are now starting to be organizations that are putting together high school tournaments. There's a group that's doing high school play here in New York State. So just like you have the New York State competition for track and field or basketball, you're starting to see more of that formalized. So I have a bunch of resources I'll be happy to pass along. Gaming Insomniacs in Schenectady is a group that's doing outreach and gaming activities, and it's just going to continue to grow. So I'd be happy to pass along some more information. I think NASEF, NASEF is one of the groups nationally that's doing some work in high school esports. So a lot of exciting stuff happening, and it's a great opportunity, and I think it's going to continue to grow into high school as well as into middle school, because as we've discussed today, gaming is, I think, for everybody. People of all ages play games, and I think it's a great opportunity to bring together students, young people with common interests in a positive environment, and have a lot of great learning opportunities and social opportunities as well.
Well, thank you again. Greatly appreciate your time and sharing of information. And hopefully we're going to be able to continue to work together with regards to opportunities like this and to bring awareness to the programs over at UAlbany. So thank you for your time today. And with that being said, I'm going to just thank everybody for joining us and kick it back over to Terry Bordell. Greatly appreciate everybody joining us today, and hopefully you found it worth your time.
Thank you, Jim. And I just want to say thank you to our outstanding presenters, guests today, Karthik and Steve, Tobi, Jamey, Mike. Thank you so much. You really enriched us today with all of the information and really emphasizing how important and how vital the gaming industry is right here in the Capital Region. So thank you for joining us today. I want to thank Jim Church for organizing this excellent event and inviting and getting those presenters to join us today. What a great morning it was. And lastly, thank you participants for joining us today. I hope you learned as much as I did. My head's spinning. That was fantastic. And I hope you enjoyed it. I wish you all a happy Friday and have a wonderful weekend coming up, and take care, be well, and thanks again. Take care, everyone.